Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Location Manager Guild International's Meet the Finalists Zoom panels. I'm Sasha Alvarez Denisoff, a Los Angeles-based locations professional. We've been doing these panels for about 5 years now, and for long as we've been doing them, it still never ceases to amaze us what it takes behind the scenes for the location professionals who scouted and managed these productions to pull it all off. Huge congratulations to all of our finalists. We're so happy to have you here and to listen to your stories. And I also wanted to take a minute to tell you about the LMGI, especially for those of you who might not be members yet. The LMGI is a nonprofit 501(c)(6) whose sole reason for existence is to promote what location professionals like you and I do for a living and to celebrate excellence on location. We're sort of your public relations arm for the profession, educating and elevating awareness to the public, government agencies, producers, directors, and even the rest of the crew on what it is that we all do, and particularly our contributions to the creative process. We do that through programs like these Zoom calls, through events, advertising, educational panels, and proactive public relations efforts such as outreach to magazines and newspapers and other promotional opportunities. Additionally, the LMGI publishes the absolutely gorgeous Compass magazine, which is filled with photographs from your fellow location professionals. We're almost 100% volunteer managed, with the exception of our lovely communications and operator director, Erica Howard, who is with us on this call. Please wave and say hello. Thank you so much for everything. And with that said, we really do need your membership subscriptions in order to keep all of these things going. So there are various levels that coincide with your level of experience for where you are in your career, whether it's an apprentice up to emeritus. If you don't know about us, if you aren't a member yet, please check us out at locationmanagers.org.
Hi, I'm James Parker. I'm going to be interviewing Nal O'Shea and Ben Firminger for Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. Guys, thanks for joining us from the UK.
Pleasure.
Thanks for inviting us. Thanks, James.
So you guys shot all over the world, land, air, and sea, in many different climates. I want to talk to you first about what seemed like a very challenging climate, the Arctic Circle. What was it like filming up there, and what kind of challenges did you guys deal with?
It was pretty cold, unsurprisingly. Amazing as well. But yeah, cold and very, very challenging. You're going to a place where we kind of set up and started in Longyearbyen, which is a small town in Svalbard, and then we did a small bit of filming there. I mean, I was there a few months in advance to just start the prep work. It was 24 hours of darkness when we went there at the start. And then yeah, we just started shoot wise. When the crew got there, we shot a little bit in Longyearbyen itself, which we had a big construction build there, which was the outside of Don Lone Tepesa's house. Having a UK construction department in the Arctic, just trying to facilitate them just to go out and build kind of stand-up sets that we'd ship from the UK was crazy challenging in itself, of like getting buses up to KSAT, the radar station, which you see in the film. You're kind of trying to use drills and you use your hands to put nails in at kind of -20. So just watching out for crew welfare, exposure. Sometimes the wind would get up, or there was snowfall, we couldn't get up the mountain, so there was lots of days where we were weathered off. So that was a challenge in itself. Just the easy bit was challenging, and then a lot of our shoot then was out on the pack ice out in the fjords, kind of. So we put all the crew onto a number of boats, and we set sail. No phone reception. We had to bring everything. You're talking about food, snowmobiles, all the boats had cranes. We had to crane stuff on and off the boats every night. We have just things you don't think of, like armed polar bear guards that are doing 24-hour watch of our boat and our set, because the natural predator in the area is a polar bear who's an absolute master hunter and just merges straight in with the landscape and sneaks up on you. So that was amazingly interesting and a challenge. Basic things like waste disposal, honey wagons. How do we bring a crew of 100+ people out onto an ice cap? Like, where do people go to the toilet? And you want to be kind of very conscious that it's you're in wilderness as well. So, bringing everything what we brought out onto the ice came back on, including bodily fluid. So yeah, that was a challenge. Frostbite, it was a constant thing. So welfare wise of building keep warm tents, briefing the crew on the early signs of frost nip, and implementing a kind of buddy system where people are looking out for each other. Is your in the camera department, is the trainee talking a bit silly, or is the top of their nose beginning, which is the first place you'll get frostbite, is that beginning to go white, getting people into tents, warming them back up, down to technical challenges like battery life and electrical goods, your battery on your phone or the cameras, it goes super, super fast. So coming up with hot boxes that we use for lunch to store, and putting little kind of heating elements to try and keep electrical goods warm. We do a lot of pre-testing with the cameras and stuff like that. And we brought a Panavision tech out with us as well, because no one knew exactly how some of the cameras are going to react to the cold. So
Wow.
lots of challenges, but great,
Yeah, a few
great fun,
things.
great fun. Yeah.
A few things you had to deal with. Polar bear guards is pretty unusual.
Yeah. I've got a little
That's
video
fun.
here for you. So one night on one of the boats, I mean, we really, really tried not to, you don't want to interact with the animals as well. They are wilderness animals, so you don't want to really interact with them, or kind of, they're not pets, and we're not kind of trying to feed them or anything like that as well. So he did one younger polar bear came up to the boat, one of our boats,
Wow.
and obviously had a just kind of interested basically in what we were up to. The guys there were, you don't want to put your hand out for that as well, but
It looks cute and cuddly, but I'm sure it will
Yeah.
rip your arm off. Wow. That thing's huge too.
yeah.
And you're standing on a barge?
We're on a big like a supply ship that would be used for servicing wind farms or offshore stores. I'll just mute that so down here. Offshore supply boats. There's big cranes. Like, we put all our kit into containers in the UK, insulated them all, and then loaded the boat in Scotland and sailed it up to Norway. So we basically, we'd no truck. So departments, we kind of made this plan of we would work out a container. So that was all on the back deck of the boat. People slept on the boat, ate on the boat. Yeah. So it was a kind of it was our studio, our home, our catering tent, and our tech base all rolled into one. Yeah. So
Wow.
there you go.
That's incredible.
So yeah, we got him a crew gift at the end of the show as well. He got sent one of the jackets there.
Wow. Oh man. So Mission Impossible, y'all have done throughout the 8 movies, there's been a lot of car chases, and you got to keep amping that up, I'm sure. You shot in a mine for one of your chases, is that correct?
Yeah, Middleton Mine up in
Well,
Derbyshire.
what was that like? What was finding the mine, securing it, making it safe for everybody?
It's a unique location for, I think, for us in the UK. We don't have most of the mines over here are sort of coal mines, and they're quite narrow and small and dark and dingy. So this was a disused limestone mine, and it's quite unique for us. It's huge inside, massive columns, sort of 60, 90 foot high, and just tunnel after tunnel of never-ending mine essentially. And I think it's been closed for about 10 years, hasn't it now? 10 or 12 years. And there's a company called Tarmac who sort of manage it now, and they manage a lot of big sites in the UK for us, and we use them for filming quite a lot, from quarries to the mines and such things like that, and dams. But the biggest challenges inside are just there's nothing there. There's no power, there's no infrastructure, there's no lights. It's quite a sterile environment. There's a lot of natural gases that are quite dangerous to human body, that are emitted from rocks deep down, that sort of come up through the many layers and levels there are inside, which we need to be careful of. So we're sort of bringing a full load of infrastructure into the mine in order just to make it safe for reccees, let alone the physical filming side of things. The communication is really bad. Phones don't work down there, similar to being in the Arctic, and radio reception is limited as well. And to top all of that off, there's a very fine layer of limestone dust that as soon as you walk over it, just sort of comes up in your face and you're starting to breathe it in. And when you're trying to film, that's one issue in front of camera. And then when you're trying to, keep your actors clean and healthy and your crew and not let them breathe it in and suffer, serious illness is another thing. So again, huge welfare undertaking just to get into the mine and make sure that it's safe for everyone to use. And then again, making sure everyone's not getting lost, enough signage, making sure they're not getting, going off just to, oh, I can't be bothered to go to the toilet back at base. I'm just going to nip round this corner and there's a 50-foot drop or something like that. It's a lot of crew management, but amazing place to film, something unique for us to do. We've done a lot of, like you say, car chases on these shows over the years, and you're always trying to find a new location that isn't just a city street at night or out of the side of a skyscraper or something like that. With you want to find something that's cool and different, and to be able to do that in the UK where we have sort of limited minds is great for us. It's a good challenge.
Keep, challenging yourself and finding new things because you've just been doing the most incredible stuff for eight movies. Sticking with safety because it's a huge concern, a lot of what you guys do. You had Tom Cruise hanging from an airplane. What went into finding those various locations? You're flying over a lot of land, and what went into finding those locations and securing them and making them safe?
Yeah, I mean, I think you almost inadvertently hit the nail on the head. Of a lot of it's driven by Tom and McHugh. So they were super lucky to work on this franchise where it's coming from the producer, the director, the writer, and the star, who are in essence all two people. And they want to do stuff for real, in camera, in real environment. So I think they'd conceived of the sequence. I think it's been in the pipeline for years and years and years. And then when it came to kind of finding it, you've got that age thing of what do we need in the film? So there was a lot of cold. You've this coldness of Svalbard, and the underwater sequence is very kind of cold and grey and austere. So to end Act 3, that was one of the things that you wanted it to feel, strong contrast to that. So warm, lush, green. So that was one parameter. Also, when it is an aerial sequence, so you are, when you're at height, you need kind of some sort of, a flat green plane is just a boring background. You need those kind of undulations of mountains, and then also like the canyon stuff through the water, like stuff that gives the planes pop out from, and also gives you kind of different levels of variation, like height variations as well, that to play with. So yeah, we looked at lots of different versions. Jungle in Thailand, different places in Gary, our designer, was in Kenya. We were in Kenya for a while, all over. And then I think just South Africa, that sequence is made up of kind of three key areas in South Africa itself. You've all the Blythe Canyon stuff at the start. You've the bulk of the work is in Drakensberg, just on the Lesotho border, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Just epic kind of backdrop. And then there's the little bit we were down in the Eastern Cape for over the ocean against the cliff. So to go to a country that is film friendly, has amazing crews, has a rebate, and then just gives you phenomenal backdrop. It was kind of a lot of times, these kind of locations, I'm not saying they choose themselves, but you start off with a very broad kind of window. And then, as I say, we tick off a warm area, your mountains, and the kind of the window begins to get tighter and tighter. Then you go scout them, and South Africa just turned out to be far and above everywhere else. And I've been to Africa many times. I've never been to South Africa. It was we ended up going on two different. We went early in the year, so we did about 3 or 4 months, and then the weather began to come in, so we kind of packed down. They went cut the sequence, realized we needed to go back out, and then we kind of went out for a second half, the back end of the year. So we went on two journeys, and it was just, it's a wonderful people, wonderful crew, just an amazing experience, and couldn't recommend going back there enough, to be very honest with you. It was just positive all round. Yeah.
Well, it looked incredible. You guys closed down Westminster Bridge. What was that process like? Did you have to get permission from the Queen?
I think Her Majesty has passed.
Oh, yeah.
Her son, the King, wasn't involved either. Yeah, again, that was a huge sequence, and it was all kind of rolled into in the film where Tom kind of gets arrested outside the embassy. There's him running over the bridge, and then we had a little bit that didn't actually make it into the final cut, but by Parliament, very close to Westminster Bridge, there's a big square where Big Ben is called Parliament Square. So we shut that and dressed that for a martial law element. So we didn't get permission from the royal family, but it was months and months in the pipeline. Like any big city, you have to get the council. Westminster Council were very helpful. We had TfL because of the amount of buses and the underground network. Met Police, the GLA, Greater London Authority, the House of Parliament in itself, it's obviously a very sensitive building from a security point of view. So they were very involved. I'm going to miss someone out and I'm going to get really in trouble. The river, because we had drones on the river. So the Port Authority in London were very involved. So those things, you start out, Tom and McHugh saying, I want to do A, B, and C. And you kind of smile and nod and say, well, I don't know, we'll see what we can do. And then, we had multiple recce's with the creative side of the film and Gary Freeman, the designer. And then you go in and we put together very, very detailed proposals. And we sat down with kind of a round table with all those stakeholders and said, look, this is what we would like to do. And this is how we propose it. And it became a little bit of a compromise. Like we didn't get a full closure on all that because we could close like some of the key streets and the square, but because that bridge is one of the key bridges for the buses to go over in London, TfL said, look, we can't close all of this in one hit. And we went away and said, okay, well, let's, what can you give us? And they said, well, after midnight, maybe between midnight and 2 when it's quietest, we could give you 5-minute holds on the bridge. So went back to Tom and McHugh and Mary, our first AD, and a few other people, and said, look, we can have all that, and we can dress it, which we needed the time to dress all the martial law bits and the other elements. It was all night work as well. So don't forget, lighting is a huge element in central London. All this plant has to come in and out in a very short period of time. So sorry, going back to the bridge, we went, how many times realistically, Tom's like, look, I can do it, and I need to, I'll try and get it in one, which he normally does. He's a phenomenal person, but let's take 2 or 3 runs of this for safety. What's our essential kit? So we kind of really pared it down back and forth with planning. I think we'd 10 to 11 vehicles, like a Luton or 2, like minimal kit, just DIT, sound. We closed the bus lane, so we kind of went out in convoy at about midnight, parked all our cars up, traffic was flowing. When Tom was warmed up and ready to go, put the lock in, lights are all on the bridge, right, go. He absolutely sprints, getting back into our safe zone, right, roads, reopen the road for 10, 15 minutes, let the traffic die down. And I think we did it. I think we had permission to do it 4 times. I think we did it twice or maybe 3 times just for safety in the end. But it was, just a lot of planning, and that's kind of, that's what you get paid for. But it was one of those really very, very rewarding nights. You kind of walk away going, that was a nice one to have in the bank.
Yeah, it's a lot of planning, a lot of different coordination, but at least you didn't have to deal with polar bears on that one.
Not yet, anyway.
The bonus. Might have to adopt that as a mantra.
Yeah.
Anytime something goes wrong, at least we're not dealing with polar bears. Final question for you guys. You did a lot of water work. How much of that was practical scouting? You filmed with a submarine, which is a crazy vehicle to film on. But yeah, how much was that scouting and trying to find that out in the real world versus figuring out what you were going to do on stage with the build?
I mean, Niall knows more about the real sub that we went to, but we did build from my side. We definitely built two huge tanks at the studio, for a lot of our set builds. So we ended up building two underwater tanks, which were for a deep dive tank. And we had an exterior shots of our submarine. It's about I think in the end it was 30 meters in diameter, 10 meters deep. So I think it's the biggest underwater tank in the world for filming. And we built a huge exterior submarine set, and that's a lot of our shots in the film are of, Tom in that tank deep diving and, making it look like we are at the bottom of the sea somewhere. And it looked incredible. We did months of training with UK Diving Services over here, to get everyone familiar with, how to work and operate in such a large volume of water, which is still controllable. And the art department and construction guys built this incredible submarine set, which, when you're looking at it on camera, could quite easily be believable and not a VFX element. And then we had a second tank that we used for our SFX gimbal work, which was essentially like a giant roller coaster ride. It was a circular ball which we had three or four different sets that we could put inside, from the torpedo room to the room with the computer and the key in, to other elements of the interior of the sub. And this set could essentially spin 360 degrees in, infinity, without having the issues of, cables getting stuck or lighting issues where lights would not reach certain parts of the set because it was all built within the cylinder. And then this cylinder would effectively lift up and down into the tank, for the scenes that we were filming. And it was huge. I mean, this was like 90 foot high, and we had a stage built over it, over the top of the gimbal. The only reason we were able to build this gimbal was because, regrettably, the war started with Russia and Ukraine, and there was an oil pipeline that was, the not built, and there was a lot of metal work lying around, which we bought and created the gimbal from that. It was not our SFX team, who are incredible, went to the computer and designed this gimbal from scratch. It's not a off-the-shelf product that you can normally buy with a set of instructions, and took us the best part of a year to construct from scratch, with no instructions. So they did an amazing job, and for it to actually work, and the art department sets to fit inside, and look so good in the water after such a long time. There was so much time and effort spent on, making sure that the sets weren't going to get corroded, the equipment wouldn't corrode in the water. We had huge filtration systems built specifically, to make sure the water clarity was incredible, not just for camera, but for crew and, our actors who are working in the water, around the clock, 24 hours a day. There was no money not spent to make sure that these tanks were, 100% effective for what Tom and everyone else needed. So yeah, it was quite an incredible part of the shoot. But Niall can certainly tell you more about the ideas of where we got the sets from, the subs that we went to look at.
Yeah, I mean, as Ben said, the sets were, you know, it was in essence like real submarine. It was fully functional, real elements. I mean, it was like walking around on a fully practical submarine, and going back to that kind of thing of, Tom and McHugh wanting to do everything in camera. Like it really is, but other than being in the sea, which I'm not, when it was spinning, that is Tom in a spinning environment. It's not like VFX are kind of rotating, or it's not a shot against blue. It's him in water on oxygen or whatever, or free diving in points. And again, going back to the military element, yeah, we when you see the sub coming to surface, that is a real US Navy nuclear submarine off the coast of somewhere in America. You know, Nick, our UPM, and the production had huge stuff with David in the military over there, and yeah, they were told, look, saddle up, get a helicopter with a shot over, be at this coordinate at this time, and yeah, they kind of shot some 3.6 amazing footage of a real asset kind of in the sea. So not even those bits, you know, there was conversations, oh, can we cheat it? And do we get SFX in to, you know, build a little thing and we can put it in the pool, or we do miniatures? And it's not the mission way. So they got a real nuclear submarine for as the smallest of beats, you know. It just goes to show that the commitment to doing it the best possible way, which is and I think that's you know, this is both. Yeah, I think Ben's done four is my third mission. I mean, it is an amazing franchise for that. Like, you know, who else would be conceive, but also then be able to take a unit to the Arctic or to, you know, tops of mountains, completely inaccessible in Africa, shoot on a real, you know, carrier and get, you know, nuclear submarine all in the same film. And it's everyone is bigger. What can we do bigger, better? And it's kind of infectious and it trickles down. And, you know, I'm on another film at the moment, and you just kind of, you know, you're so institutionalized and normalized from doing amazingly harebrained, nothing is impossible stuff on mission. And then you kind of go to another film, which is still amazing in its own way, but you're kind of like, oh yeah, this is more normal and slightly, slightly mundane. So, you know, hopefully there's, whether it's mission or similar films, but there's many more to come, and they'll have us back on the next one. Yeah.
But yeah, you guys made an incredible movie. I don't know where you go from there. Outer space, I don't know where to top all those.
There'll be plenty of
Amazing
space,
locations.
plenty of space to park the trucks up there anyway, James. Won't be
Yeah,
worried.
kind of just float away.
And no
Probably.
polar bears.
What's
No
that?
polar bears,
No
exactly.
Yeah,
polar
no
bears.
polar bears. Polar bears in space. That's a whole different.
This is our crew unloading off of the Navy aircraft at the airport in Italy when they were on the aircraft carrier. We basically strict protocols of how to stand in formation like this when we were on the aircraft carrier, and it was practiced at the local airport before we boarded the plane with our hand luggage only for 5 days, which was quite interesting.
That's awesome. Did you have to go to the aircraft carrier?
We had to go to it. The aircraft carrier was out in the water doing a NATO training mission, and we were allowed to go on for 5 days and sort of be on board while it was sort of doing training with a couple of frigates in close proximity. And we got a stern talking to from the captain of the ship at the start, that there would be absolutely no complaining about the facilities while on board. There was 5,000 Navy personnel on the ship, and they live in those quarters each and every day, serving their country, and they don't complain about it. They get on with it. You know, they're effectively, you know, training for war, and we were guests on the boat, and there was to be no complaining. And to be fair, our crew stepped up to the mark. They got rid of their niceties for a week and their hair dryers and their fluffy pillows, and they camped like the Navy staff did, and it was good. It was really impressive to watch and see. And sort of I think a lot of people already have respect for the people that work in services, but to be on the ship and see it firsthand was quite impressive. This was one of the Osprey helicopters that we filmed with, and just to show the size of it when it's on the ground is something to behold. This aircraft is a helicopter slash aircraft, so those rotors will rotate vertically upwards, and it will take off vertically like a helicopter would, and it will fly, for X amount of meters in the helicopter position, and then whilst in the air, the helicopter rotors will come down to the position they are in this photo, front facing, and it will fly like an aircraft at a much greater speed. So it's quite a diverse military aircraft for warfare that the US have, and they have a lot of these, and we've worked on with quite a few of these over the time on mission. So to see it on the ground in its in this state is quite something to behold.
Where is this?
This is at the airport in Italy that we used as a forwarding base before we went out to the aircraft carrier. It was sort of the closest, just in the background there is actually the sea, sort of blends in with the horizon of the sky, but it's the closest base we had for refueling for when we were doing air-to-air filming on the aircraft carrier.
And they transported you guys out there.
They did. We weren't actually transported in the helicopters. We were transported all aircraft out onto the aircraft carrier because they can land just about with the short runway on the aircraft carrier. The Ospreys were just with aircraft with Navy personnel inside. So
Wow.
we had our crew in the aircraft on the normal plane.
How easy was it to work with the US military?
Well, Mission have actually got a really good relationship with the US military. We've used them for like the last 3 or 4 films now, and they absolutely love Tom, which is brilliant for us. I think the earlier days of other films such as Top Gun help out for that. And but we often have inquired with the DoD in the US and seen what military assets are in the areas of wherever we're filming. And some of the countries we filmed in the past, especially the UAE, they've got huge US military assets based out there, from helicopters to huge aircraft, C-17 planes, and other tanks and whatnot. So we've used a lot of different equipment over the years. Most notably, I think it was Mission 6 when Tom did his halo jump from the aircraft out the back of it, the C-17. That was all done for real. He trained for that at high altitude, low opening, parachute jump, with oxygen. And we got some amazing camera footage in the film, and it's all done for real.
That's amazing. I appreciate you guys joining us and sharing some incredible stories. And congrats on your nomination. You both certainly deserve it. And good luck.
Right.
Thank you very much. Thanks, James.
And anybody from anywhere in the world likes to visit this place. And so on any day, you can get 7,000 to 10,000 tourists who all want to walk over this bridge and look around this town. And so I know, Halid, that was a particular thing, all the tourists trying to get in while you were there.
Yeah. But this, even the local authority helped us a lot to deal with that. So we didn't have any issue closing the site for 9 days.
Huh. Well, and how long were you guys in Morocco for?
It was the shoot in Morocco lasted for 9 days, but the prep was very, very long because they had to add some build to the Kingdom of Heaven set. So it took almost 6 months of prep.
Okay. All right.
And Halid, could you talk about building the sea? I've never ever seen the sea built in Ouarzazate. Bear in mind,
No, there's no sea.
You know,
No sea. It was,
within 100 miles of the Sahara Desert, Halid was digging
it's
swimming pools for sea.
no. It was more of the VFX thing.
I saw the water in pictures. You dug a swimming pool that was like 200 meters by 300 meters.
No, it was just a small bit that they put. But no big pool or nothing.
I want to thank you for joining us.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to be talking with Elston Howard, who was the supervising location manager on Sinners, which is set in 1930s Mississippi, kind of Southern Gothic horror film, but it was shot in neighboring Louisiana. Elston has been nominated for an LMGI award before for his work on Parish. He's also worked on Your Honor seasons 1 and 2, Blackbird, Five Nights Freddy. But we're here to talk about Sinners today. And, period projects, they always have their special challenges. So I'm kind of curious as to what was the overall look that you were going for, that you were, working with a production designer and the director on this, and where did you go to find this?
So, working on Sinners, and obviously I'm based out of New Orleans, Louisiana, which, a lot of people think New Orleans and they immediately think French Quarter music and those things. Scouting for Sinners, I quickly learned on day one riding around with Ryan that he's a music guy. So I always recall the first day getting in a car with him, and there were all this blues music playing, and I said, well, we're going to go to Thibodaux, Louisiana, which is where it's a plantation located about 45 minutes outside the city of New Orleans, and that's the location that we built the chapel. And when we got there, Ryan's vision, it was dead on. He was basically like, hey, I've listened to about 5 or 6 songs that these are the songs that's going to lead into this specific scene, that opens up with the Reverend and his son before he goes off with Smoke and Stack to get into a world of trouble, unbeknownst to them. So, the thing about New Orleans and most of the quintessential period locations are all along the Mississippi River. Most of the plantation homes, the 200 to 300 year oak trees, because that was basically the artery that fed to, everything from a lifestyle in the 18 and 1900s.
And what about some of the things that you needed to match specifically, maybe like Clarksdale train station?
Yeah, so based on some reference pictures that our production designer, Hannah Beechler, showed to us, we were fortunate enough to find a train depot located in Bogalusa, Louisiana. One of the things you all will realize that, we have some very unique names of towns, and the pronunciations of them are a lot different than most people would from a correct grammar standpoint. So Bogalusa, Louisiana, it's located about 55 minutes out of the city of New Orleans. It was pretty much architecturally a direct hit scale wise and what Ryan had seen in Clarksdale. I never went with him there, but he did some pre-scouting there. So we were fortunate enough to find this train depot that's privately owned. We all, as location managers, know the challenges of dealing with live railroad tracks and different companies and all. The beauty of this location is that it had an in track and an out track of about 4 to 5 miles to a privately owned paper mill. So we were able to, utilize those tracks because it wasn't part of, the connecting process from one train company to another. And, the town from a prosthetic standpoint was perfect. One of the unique things with Ryan and just the details that he has vision was all the streets in Clarksdale during that period had red dirt, which is something that, we had to transport in from Mississippi, lay it down on, concrete streets and asphalt streets just to get that unique look.
And you were dealing with some extreme weather during this time. You were mentioning from some of the notes that I had. What was that like? Because you had a lot of rain
Yeah,
and a lot of rain in the actual movie. So
yeah, it's tough in New Orleans filming because you obviously have the hot months of June, July, August. You're always afraid to be in production, and we have the hurricane elements and stuff here. Our full production, filming wise, we started in April of 2024, and we literally finished like the middle of July, which is really the rainiest months of our area. 2024 was actually one of the highest rated rain periods. And the challenges we had with, a movie that the only interior location was the sawmill slash juke joint. So you know, we had to obviously find areas that were very isolated, very rural. We quickly learned with the red dirt, which is primarily used here for a base for like highways because it's very pliable, it's flexible. What happens with red dirt when it's raining, it's like walking on ice. And it takes about, you know, 3 to 4 days longer to dry than just regular dirt because that's the purpose of it. It's more of a clay substance. So a lot of challenges like at the train depot was, you know, finding those ideal. That was about a 10-day prep and it rained like 6 of the 10 days prepping there. And, you know, we had to delay production shooting there because it was too slippery for, you know, the actors in the background and stuff to walk on. So that's one of the challenges.
And you'd given us some interesting drone footage too. Let me see if I can pull this up and you can tell me what we're looking. Where are we? What are we looking at?
So what you're looking at, there's a old golf course. You know, we're approaching the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. And there's actually still parts of the city and the outskirts of the city that have been pretty much abandoned or have not been redeveloped as you know, what they were pre-Katrina. So this is a drone shot, and I'll share this story. We were looking for the quintessential location to build the exterior of the sawmill juke joint. And day one, trying to get out to this location, you know, the drone doesn't really show it, but that what looks like solid ground is about 4 feet of just this weed, sticky stuff. And we're about a mile and a half into this area from any type of road infrastructure to get specifically to this point. And I took Hannah out because we had gone to numerous locations. There were specific elements Ryan was looking for. He wanted, obviously, in the story, the sawmill has been abandoned and it's sold off to him to open up a juke joint. You'll see when we pan back, the elements that Ryan wanted was a body of water behind where the juke joint was going to be built. He didn't want it to be vast. He wanted the ability to see across the body of water. And this is the location that we wind up building it. I shared this, and Sasha, you can go back and show some stills. I took Hannah out to this area, and literally we were walking for about, like I said, about a mile and a quarter, and she's just yelling at me like, Elston, I have no idea why you're taking me out there. And I'm like, look, just give me a minute to get to this location. And when we got out to the location, if you can pull up one of the stills, she felt that it was like the perfect location. The key to it was we were going to take Ryan out there in exactly 2 days because it was one of our last locations to find, and we were in a deadline to have it ready for the first day of filming at that location. And what we wind up doing in that 2-day period is completely clearing out just enough areas so Ryan could envision and Hannah marked off, you know, the actual location, and we brought him out to this location, and that wind up being, you know, the set to build there.
What was the most challenging thing about this particular project?
Well, I would say, you know, we deal with some unique environmental situations here. If you're rural, like for an example, when we were clearing out that area, you know, obviously we had animal wranglers and alligator wranglers, snake wranglers. The biggest elements were, you know, that body of water. I had to quickly explain to the construction crew when they started building there that when you feed a predator, they tend to come to you. So there's probably 200 alligators in that pond that's behind the area that we cleared out. You know, obviously snakes, and we have, you know, these, you know, huge mosquitoes. So the elements, that bothered a crew, whether it was wrangling snakes, whether it's alligators coming to the shoreline and mosquitoes, we would, we would spray. We would spray the area probably, a month prior to going out there. And obviously the infrastructure to get to that specific area, we had to build roads. The complete set, we dug a 2 feet cavity of the ground base. We dropped in oil board roads, and then of course we packed it back over so it couldn't be seen, because during the time of filming, we had huge cranes out there. We had to drive pylons for the physical exterior set. So those were, some of the challenges at that location.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us about this project. And I'm going to hand it over now to JP O'Connor, who's going to be talking to the finalists from A Real Pain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elston.
Oh, hello. Hello, Michael. So I want to introduce you. I'm sure everybody's seen Real Pain. Jesse Eisenberg goes back and, kind of does a road trip with his crazy brother, and they eventually end up leaving something on their grandmother's front door. Was that actually their grandmother's front door?
Probably yes. Yes, I would say probably yes, because she lived on the number 25 in this city. But after we shoot it and I spoke to the town hall, they said, we found out later that they've changed the numeration. So they moved everything a little bit
Oh,
around.
that's pretty
So
funny.
maybe number 25 was in different place than it was. But the shop was there because she had a shop when she lived there before war. So the shop was there, different shop, but it was. Number 12 was there. Everyone liked it. So yeah, so we will never know, but for sure we've met some people who had the pictures of Jesse's family as well. So I sometimes had a call at 7 o'clock in the morning saying someone is looking for me because he wants to talk to Jesse and show the pictures of his family. He found out somewhere on or his grandma knew them. So yeah, so it was like a true story and true place. If the building was the same, let's say yes, it was exactly the same.
Well, I mean, it's a wonderful journey for Jesse to go back and kind of recreate some of the reality of his life. I wanted to congratulate, you being nominated for the second time for LMJ Award. First was for
Of the third time.
third. It's the third time.
Yes, Cold War, the Zone of Interest, and
Oh, Zone of Interest. You're right.
Yeah.
That's my mistake. So yes, that was right. I wrote that in my notes. All films I loved a lot, and all films that have been Oscar nominated, and it's quite a lovely track record. Did Barbara work with you on both of them, on all of them?
No, only for the Real Pain.
Oh, okay, for The Real Pain. So, you handled all the shooting in Warsaw, right, Barbara?
Yeah, yes, the whole movie was 27 days, and we shot 26 in Poland. So yes, main locations were in Warsaw and in Lublin, and Krasny stuff was, I think, a day or two, as far as I remember.
So, in Jesse's script, he had specified the concentration camp, the Warsaw Uprising Monument, and the Monument of the Ghetto Heroes. So those are always already specified. So you mentioned that the concentration camp was the most difficult of your locations.
Yes, Jesse been in Poland before, and a few times even, so he specified quite a lot of things. Sometimes through the Google, sometimes the memory he had being in Lublin before. But yes, when we finished the Zone of Interest, which took us 4 years, and then we got, and when I went to the office, they said, "Oh, finally something easy for us to do." And I just sat and say, easy. We have a airplane, we have a airports, we have a concentration camp, we have the most important monuments in Warsaw, we have an old town in Lublin, shot it in, as I said. It's not gonna be so easy as you think, but on the beginning, we, as a production, we thought that we might need to build the part of a concentration camp, because there is a rule, which I agree, there is no movie sets in the concentration camps. But I decided to talk to them. I sent the script, and they said, yeah, the script shows what's going on now, so it's just like a trip. So after long talk with them, after we've met, Jesse met them as well, and we said it's gonna be a smallest crew possible, and we're gonna do it with all the cautious, and they will tell us what we can shoot and what we shouldn't shoot at all, what we should show, and how to behave. They agreed to let us in. Yes, yeah.
And how long were you in there shooting?
It was a day. It was only one day. It was Monday, because Monday the museum is closed, so they decided that this is the best, and truly the place itself, yeah, we wouldn't be able to do much more than one day, to be honest.
So how small was that skeleton crew that went in there?
Of course, the crew supposed to be about 20 people, and it became 50 people. So it was a basically normal crew for the movie like this. But no lights, nothing like that. So basically, camera, small light department, everything what was needed was there. But we strictly went with them, and we showed them all the DOP took a pictures before on a recce, and we show them what we mainly will show in a movie. Sometimes they said you can show this, but you cannot show that. And after all, they've been with us on a set, and they always look what we're shooting and what's going on.
So the shoot was primarily all shot with a crew of about 50 crew?
Yes, yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
So what were the challenges?
Which in Poland, let's say the crew, it's about 60, 70
Yeah,
people.
that's a good size.
I heard about Mission Impossible. I think that one scene there would be probably cost more than our full movie we did.
Oh, I mean,
So-
all very different challenges, but challenges in their own right.
Yes, yeah.
So what was the main challenge regarding the Warsaw Uprising Monument?
The Warsaw Uprising monuments, it's commemorates about 150 to 200,000 people, which was killed in 2 months uprising in Warsaw. So for this city and for Poland, it's like one of the most important places. So when I get a script and I read it, I first think it was of course Majdanek concentration camp, and second thing was sending it to the Warsaw town hall and talking to them if it's gonna be possible to shoot there, because the scene is nothing wrong with the scene. It's a little bit of fun, it's a little bit of a building story, but it's still the place that we choose was quite hard. The funny thing is, when we received the permit for it, we received the permit for square, but not stairs and not monument itself. We did get it like 2 days before shooting. So when we read with Barbara what we can do there and what we can't do there, I said, oh no, it's not gonna work. So I need to call to the town hall and talk to them again and explain them what's going on, and when they called a little bit lower and said we need to change the permit and let them do it, because we still prayed as a location. We prayed for a little bit of rain, very crowded place as well. So I said with all the tourists there, we wouldn't be able to shoot it properly. So
did you have any weather challenges shooting?
No, not as much. No, I don't remember we did.
You also mentioned about the railway station on the platform.
Yes, yeah. Yes, we first of all we shoot on a guerrilla style in a main train station in the capital city, with Jesse, with Kiran, and few others famous people. So I was really scared how we gonna do it, but apparently people who goes and travels in this way, they don't expect seeing famous stars on the way. The last part when we went to the platform and the real train was arriving and they try to get to the real train, which just stops for 2 minutes, and people get out from them and they just look at the faces of who is outside the train, that people find out that we're shooting a movie there. But the train itself, we shoot it on a platform in a technical part of the railway station. So it was 3 days of shooting, or 1 day preparing, 2 days of shooting, and it was on a standing train. Of course, if they wanted a train to go on a tracks, it's doable, but it's much more complicated, and its cost, it's 10 times higher than on a standing train.
So the other really interesting thing in Lubin was going to the cemetery of 800 years of history.
Yes, yeah, yes, yeah. And it's a, yeah, you know, the Jewish committee, they've seen the script as well, and they said yes, it's we're fine with it. It's part of the history, and they said yes. On the end of the day, we had a, I think Barbara was there. We had a Jewish trip, like 80 people
Yeah.
trying to get there, even if the cemetery was
Yeah,
closed.
girls only.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we've got Ross Broder and Ben Wiseman joining us to talk about Nora. Another Zoom event that the LMGI does is Locations Behind the Oscars, and we were lucky to have Ross on for that, and I'm happy to have him back for this. We are all over Brooklyn for this. Ross, thanks for being with us. Tell us a little bit about what went into filming this, because we're talking about a tiny budget, tiny department. We're pretty much all on location for this. How'd it go?
It went pretty well, I think. I mean, the crew was literally myself, Ben, and a unit PA. That was our whole location team. So that in of itself was certainly challenging. And the fact that we kind of found a hub certainly worked well for us so that we could, try to accomplish not moving around too much and getting as much as we could get done in some of the days where we were doing multiple locations to just push move down the block or around the corner. But the Russian neighborhood that we were in Brighton Beach is tough. Luckily we had a little liaison that we worked with in the beginning who was quite helpful. Um, and but yeah, I mean, it went really well, and I think once we kind of made friends with a bunch of the places that we needed to get involved with working with, it went pretty smoothly.
So what did it take to get into those communities? Because typically, Brighton Beach, the Russian communities are pretty closed off to outsiders, much less filming.
Yeah, so like I said, anybody that's worked in New York knows that like Chinatown and Little Odessa, it's like as you walk through the door, they're like, no, 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 no. They're just not having it. So the liaison that we had was actually a young woman that Ben had gone to school with and put me in touch with. I took her around with me for the first couple weeks when I was just sort of introducing the idea to people. And I sort of pitched it as like a love letter to the neighborhood that we were going to be sort of, highlighting some of the real gems of the neighborhood. And when you tell like one business that you're using another business, they all kind of get, curious and don't want to be left out. And I think that strategy worked for getting a bunch of the places interested to work with us, playing them
Yeah.
against each other a little bit.
And then what went into finding the house, like our hero house? Because that seemed to be a very special arrangement that you had with the owner in order to get him on board for filming.
Yeah, Sean is actually the one that found the house initially, and he got in touch with me in the beginning of the project and said, "This is where I want to shoot. Can you make this happen?" And when I went out there and met with the owner, we just hit it off. We just hit it off. And his big concern was, what are you going to do for security? And I said, we don't really have a budget for security, but how about I just live here for 3 weeks? And he was like, great. If you're willing to do that, that would be awesome. So living there was quite helpful. And they were just amazing people. They have a lot of money, but they're very generous. All the cars that were in the film were actually his family's cars that he let us use. And they were just super accommodating, for us.
I've got some pictures actually from that because if anyone remembers, we had a very interesting story about a plate. Let me pull up this plate.
Yeah. So the plate story. Well, I'm Jewish, the owner's Jewish. I'm not very religious, but he is. And what had happened one day was one of the PAs asked if they could spend the night. We had a long day. I said no problem. And he decided to cook himself a pork chop on this guy's, you know, stove. And the guy had some cameras, and I get a phone call, and he's like, "Is that a pork chop being cooked in my house?" And I said, "I guess it is." And he said, "Oh my God, if my wife finds out, she's going to kill me. You got to get rid of the evidence." And, he ate it on this, like, I forget, it was like this designer plate. And
Hermes,
what was it?
Hermes plate, like a $300 plate.
Right, it was like a $300 Hermes plate. So long story short, somebody had said to me, there's a tradition where, you have to bury the plate. And it just became this kind of inside joke. And I had made this guy, his name was Jared Greenberg. I was like, now we have to, bury the plate. So I came up with this goofy, Hebrew that I put on the plate, which was just letters that I found in a Torah, and we said a prayer which was similar to like the Hanukkah prayer, but I just threw, bless the plate. We dug a hole in the guy's backyard and we buried it. So kind of like a funny thing.
What other interesting challenges did you come up with on this project? I mean, you were, sort of run and gun. It was very guerrilla style. Like, what was happening in some of the restaurants?
One of the main challenges we had one restaurant which was run by this Russian woman who had, Sean wanted to shoot in places that were active. And when we were looking for Ivan, we wanted to look for Ivan, right, and make it real. So one of the women said, just come by. All my friends get drunk on Wednesday nights. Nobody's going to know what's going on. Just show up. Don't worry about it. We got it. And we did do that. And the first few takes went okay. But then by the third take, when they figured out they were all part of this movie that they didn't know they were going to be a part of, they kind of got squirrely. And a couple of the older Russian guys were like, basically threatened, one threatened to like punch one of my guys in the face, and it got kind of, squirrely. This is the only word I could use. Everybody was a little bit edgy. And by like the fifth take, I just said, Sean, like, we better get out of here before we throw down with these Russians in the middle of this dance floor. Like, they're not having it anymore. Uh,
Wow.
so that, that was one of the main challenges with trying to do that run and gun. Nobody knows what you're doing, but the film crew style.
Now but you sent me a bunch of other pictures. Let me see if I can go through these and then you can sort of tell me what we're looking at.
So I shared this with you because I think this really showcases just how sort of, when you're doing a low budget movie, this is how low budget it was. I mean, there's a guy on the hood with a, little bottle of water, and, the art director's like throwing some foam that's supposed to be snow, and the first AD's got it in her face, and Sean and Drew um, are just looking on like this is a total disaster.
Yeah, the last shot, this was from the last shot of the movie when you have like that devastating look of Annie's face after she um, has sex with Igor. And we actually had to shoot that 3 times because Sean didn't like it. There was one time where,
you know, this was a live road because we kept on like waiting for snow. It never snowed that year. And we did it one time in front of this old folks home in Brighton Beach. So there's a middle of this take of this very serious scene, and then this bus pulls up with all these old ladies trying to walk behind. And we're like just frantic trying to get the scene done.
Yeah, one of the problems was where Annie's exterior, which is this shot where her house was. When I scouted it initially, it was, I guess, the time of day, you know, it looked like reasonable. But then when we went to shoot, sure enough, it was like every geriatric patient was being offloaded from some type of minivan in the middle of the road. And they were just lined up in a procession. And it was problematic, to say the least.
See, we got a gas station shot over here. We got,
Yeah.
oh, here we go. Here are
yeah.
geriatrics.
Yeah, that's the geriatric crew. That's the second just going, yep, here we go. We got another one. This is the back of my pickup truck. We threw Drew in the back there. And he's the DP, and you know, we were shooting out of the back of a pickup truck all over the place, you know, just a lot of run and gun. We certainly stole quite a few things and certainly did a bunch of stuff that was not on our permit. But you know, that's how you get down when you're making a film like this.
And then this mugshot.
Yeah, I got really lucky, Sean. You know, one of my shticks, I don't know if any of the other location managers experience this, but because I ride around with the director, as we all do, I've been lucky enough to get thrown in a couple films. So Sean decided to make me the security guard at the mansion, and there I am.
All right, I think we have to move on to the next one, but it was so great to talk to you guys about this again. Really fantastic work. It looks beautiful on screen. And thanks again for being with us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gina, who's going to be talking to our finalists from Fly Me to the Moon.
I want to thank the location team from Fly Me to the Moon for joining us today. We have Julietta Ray, Stacy McGillis Evans, and Maida Morgan. Can you guys introduce yourselves to everybody and tell us a little, you know, like briefly what you've worked on in the past?
Hi, my name is Julietta. I have been in the film industry for almost 15 years. I got in right at the age of 21. I was born in Argentina. I grew up here in the States, though. I have worked episodic television quite a bit. My first feature was Rock of Ages. I've worked on Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. So I've worked very closely with Brian Coogler and Autumn and that whole team. So I bet that was pretty exciting. I've done the Miss Marvel series. I've played a bit over on the DC world. And then I actually just wrapped up Madden with Nicolas Cage and Christian Bale, which is a David O. Russell film, which was pretty interesting.
Maida, you want to go ahead?
Hey, are you going, Stacy, or I'm Maida Morgan, and you know, for better or for worse, I've been doing this for 35 plus years, and I'm not going to go through all of my films because we might be here for a long time, but I've done a lot, and I started. It's the only job I've ever done. Loved it. Fly Me to the Moon was a great experience. Great team, great people. Very complicated, and it's good to see Julietta and Stacy here, and look forward to talking about it. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm Stacy McGillis Evans. I've been location managing for about 20 years now, and I've done everything from episodic to features to commercials. Kind of runs the gamut. Everything from super low budget to higher budget. And Fly Me to the Moon, I was invited to join because I live here in Florida, and it was such a beautiful thing to get to meet Julietta again because we had worked together briefly in Atlanta, and to get to meet Maida, and I think we made a really good team.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of time, so I really just want to go straight into NASA.
The best part.
Yeah, exactly.
The hardest part.
So anyway, how long were you scouting for a cheat for NASA before you got approval to do a film at NASA?
I actually started. We started filming in NASA in I think we started in, was it late February or March of 2022, and I started scouting for it in late May, June of 2021. But they always knew they wanted to film at NASA, but it was always juggling when would be a good time, because I think initially we wanted to be there in December of 2021. But so they sort of dictated when the window when we would get there based on the window of our filming. So I would say, and then we didn't know exactly what we were going to get. So we were almost scouting almost up until the end of October for NASA, and had contingencies of what we were going to do and what we weren't going to do. But I think going into production in October, we knew the bigger chunks of what we were going to have. So it was, I would say, a solid 6 months.
Okay. And then from prep and shooting, wrapping, how long were you guys at NASA?
The actual physical part of being at NASA, we filmed, I think it was about 6 or 7 days. The locations department was on the ground. We filmed at the very end of February. The locations department was on the ground first week of February, but we had actually started putting this together, meaning the narrative timelines, which I had sent you guys a link to, so you can kind of look through all the paperwork that we basically had to do. I started putting that together in October, September.
Would have been October, yeah.
Yeah, because mid-October was our tech scout, so early October.
Yeah, we had to have a very specific, almost minute by minute timeline of what we wanted to do, what every person on our crew was doing in every minute. We had to have that initial timeline in, I think, in October, and Julietta put that together. Yeah.
Wow, it seems like a huge challenge.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
Was there a moment at NASA where you guys found yourself in a bind and there was somebody there that was your ally that helped you navigate the challenges of, because we all experience this. I mean, when you're working with on a project, they want to change things on you. And it doesn't matter how much you warn them.
Well, I think the difficulty with that we were facing, besides the massive crew we had and the massive number of extras and all of the picture cars and the equipment and all of that stuff, was we were facing multiple launches. And so if and when those launches scrubbed, we then had to pivot immediately, because we couldn't necessarily go to a place that we were going to prep, or we couldn't necessarily shoot in a place that we were intending to shoot the next day. So when these launches pivoted, we had to pivot, and it just kept happening. And it just was like this never ending pivot. And Julietta, you can speak to some of the frustration and terror with that.
Well, I think, working in this industry, we're a very fluid industry where, especially the AD team, the producers, just kind of everybody goes into a location going, we can kind of wing it a little bit. We got a plan, but we don't have to stick to that. NASA's the one place that you have to stick to. So Stacy might actually remember this. We were on a Zoom call with the AD team, which was a phenomenal team, the best I've ever worked with, and the producers talking about our actual first day of filming. And the information that we'd given NASA up until that point was, we will be starting at the exterior of the vehicle assembly building, sometime between 9 a.m. and 11. We'll be there for an hour or two, and then maybe we'll move inside. They were like, no, I need the exact times. So trying to get that information from the AD department was almost impossible. And I remember that it must have been an answer that she must have given a million times. It was comical at this point. But Alina, the second AD, was like, I can't give you these specifics. I mean, we're not launching rockets. And it was just dead silence. And I was like, yeah, but they are. So it was just a really comical moment, because I was like, they plan every single minute. So, like Maida and like Stacy were saying, the narrative timelines, which was essentially a one-liner for every single day, accounted for the travel time from the press identification site, which is the main point where everybody meets, loads the buses, up until our staging lot inside of actual Kennedy Space Center it was either 11 minutes or 14 minutes, but it was an exact. So, 9 a.m. depart, 9:14, you're at this, staging area. From 9:14 to 9:18, you are walking from this parking lot into the vehicle assembly building. So those were the biggest challenges in NASA, was trying to stick to the timelines that you had given them. By day 3 or 4 of filming, there was a little leeway, and they were like, all right, well, you guys are okay. They gave us a little more freedom, but the first 3-4 days were strict. Like, what was on that paper was what happened. And with the launch of scrubbing and us having to, alter what we were doing, those narrative timelines that were 3-4 pages long per day all had to be redone every single night. So it'd be like 1 or 2 in the morning, and it'd be myself and, and David or Patrick Shannon sitting in the hotel lobby at like 2 in the morning with like whatever frozen pizza we had found, and like redoing the narrative timeline, so that by the time Kathleen, which was our rep at NASA, woke up, she had the latest and greatest information. So we were running on the clock, 24
This is
hours.
David Brute. He was one of our
Oh, yeah, hey, this is David.
and we love him.
It's funny. I'm envisioning like somebody, some PA saying, "Can you hold that rocket?" Or the sound department.
Well, one of the what I think true helps for us was that adjacent to NASA, to Kennedy Space Center, but incorporated in it was a main location that we had called the Old Shuttle Landing Facility, which oddly enough is permitted a little differently from NASA. I had actually founded NASA years ago in the 90s, and luck would have it that the guy running that facility was my escort when I filmed there a long time ago. And when you say, was there somebody that was specific in really helping us solve problems, his name was John Graves. And I just remember being very thankful to John a few times, because as we would run into these problems that were just monumental and almost catastrophic in a way, there was such a relief that came when John said, well, just come out here and do that here. Or you can, if y'all need to move things around, it was nice to just kind of have a cushion spot there that you could just kind of move in and out of. But because Julietta and Stacy and David and Patrick and all of them, I mean, it was such a, no margin for error kind of schedule that was when you were on NASA proper that you had to keep. So it was nice to kind of be incorporated with NASA with something that had a little more flexibility, that was a little easier, made by John Graves.
Well, a shout out to him. Okay, so given this was a period piece, did you guys? Well, let me finish this up with NASA. So when you guys think of NASA, when you guys think of working at NASA, is it more like, oh wow, I worked at NASA? Or because of all the challenges, is it more like a post-traumatic syndrome?
Both.
Yeah, a little bit of both, but I think, especially myself as an immigrant, to be standing in the middle of American history and, where the rockets are created and where the astronauts walk out of, the vans that they loaded into, Crawler Road, it was a pretty outstanding experience. It was by far one of the most difficult things I think we've all ever put together, but it was one of the most rewarding. I mean, it's, being able to call our family standing in the middle of the vehicle assembly building was pretty cool. I mean, I'm sure David had a very similar experience. I mean, helicopters, everything.
I think like all the chaos we went through without the day, at the end of each day, getting to stand there at NASA and just kind of look at everything. It's like, holy crap, we're actually here. We're doing this. We're in the middle of it.
Yeah, we got to watch 2 launches.
Wow.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, that was, and well, the cool part was it was March 1st was my birthday, and it launched technically March 2nd because it was like just after midnight. But I was at base camp. Stacy and the rest of the team was actually at the Apollo 1 memorial because we did film there as well. And so they got to watch the launch from that side of the world, like that side of the, different campus, but kind of same campus. But it was really cool that we all got to, you know, kind of experience the Cruise 6 launch. I have a whole video of it. It's like 2.5 minutes long, and it makes like all the car alarms go off. It was the coolest thing ever. You know, all of us that are from, I mean, Stacy sees them all the time because she lives down there, but we all live in Atlanta. We don't get to see that. So it was really cool.
Yeah, you know, I think that's one of the best things about our job is that we actually get into situations like that, you know, where we get access and we get to see things that, you know, regular folks may not have access to.
Yeah.
So these are like fond memories. You know, so this was a period piece. So when prepping for locations for a period piece, did you run into any challenges, you know, trying to, you know, prep the set, remove certain poles or anything?
I think with regards to that, not probably, but definitely, we started filming the Monday before Thanksgiving, and then over the Thanksgiving holiday, we made a company move to Savannah to film for 1 week. And we had a scene where Kelly gets in the Camaro and goes into town to an electronics store, breaks an electronics store, steals a TV, and comes back. Well, that electronics store sat in the heart of the Savannah business district, with all the Christmas decorations that were put up, you know, for the downtown shopping season. And of course, we didn't want Christmas decorations up. We didn't. It was the summertime, so we went through a real difficult permitting process of not only getting permission to film because we had to clear the streets, but to take down the Christmas decorations. They had lights draping across the Christmas lights draping exiting across the streets. We, you know, we had problems with those, and then the city of Savannah had a moratorium on filming and said, you know, y'all, you really can't come in here and do this at this time. And we literally were like a launch window. We had to do it then or not at all. So that whole sequence of shutting down the only road into Tybee Island, shutting down the only road into a national park, and trying to film in Savannah during the Christmas holiday season and take down the Christmas decorations and put them back up. That when you asked that question, that was the main thing that hit my mind, because that was such an overwhelming undertaking. But it happened for 30 seconds of filming.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I have to pass this over to Sasha. She's going to interview the team from A Complete Unknown.
Thank you for having
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, we've just got 3 more films to go through, and thank you everyone for sticking with us for these crazy stories that we get to hear from people about all the stuff they were doing behind the scenes. I have with me Michael Stenziale, who was working on A Complete Unknown. Anthony Pisani was the location manager on this. He wasn't able to make it, but Michael was involved in this film from pre-production scouting through the very end. So, Michael, if you want to unmute and say hello, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So yeah, we're in 1960s New York for this. Tell me a little bit about what went into scouting for this, because this is a very specific time period, and we're talking about a real person, Bob Dylan, and places that he actually was in. So what were you able to, you know, film in New York for New York? And then at what point did you sort of have to venture out in order to still get period accurate looking buildings?
Absolutely. So yeah, I was like Sasha mentioned, Anthony unfortunately couldn't make it. I was one of the ALMs on the project. We, you know, started prep pre-strike and then kind of picked up again after the strike. And you know, this project went through I think a pretty long scouting process, in the sense of one of our scouts, Aaron Hurwitz, you know, was on this before any of us, maybe even before Timothy Chalamet was like officially playing Bob Dylan. You know, and this was like years ago, and development changes and things like that. But the production eventually settled on filming in New Jersey, for tax incentive purposes. And so we were a bit confined, just from a production standpoint of how much could be in New Jersey versus New York. We only did, I think, 2 days in the city in the end, and that was basically the exterior of the federal courthouse downtown, where Pete Seeger sings to the crowd after coming out of the courthouse, and then at the Hotel Chelsea, which are just two iconic New York buildings that you really can't recreate somewhere else. Everything else was all in New Jersey. And what that meant is sort of finding hubs that maintained a certain architectural, style, if it's in their brownstones of, Greek revival or what have you, that fit that 1960s West Village look. And kind of the frustrating thing about it is because so much of the film took place in real places in New York, we were right across the river, thinking, oh, this place exists like, a few miles away for real. But even New York City is the tapestry of the city is changing so rapidly in terms of construction and new projects. A lot of the West Village, has been sort of conserved in a way, but a lot of it has changed. Jones and Fourth, where the cover of Free Will and Bob Dylan is totally different now than how it was in the 60s. And so we found hubs to recreate that, mostly in Hoboken, New Jersey, and Jersey City, New Jersey, and Paterson, New Jersey, that sort of matched the style, and we could cheat, and sort of take over and control.
And what about the Newport Folk Festival? Where did you end up finding that?
Yeah, so that was all in Cape May, which is a beach town at the very south end of New Jersey. And it's just sort of this tucked away, sort of stuck in the past, if you will, in terms of the aesthetic, timeless place that has these Victorian homes and this sort of classic US beach town vibe to it. And they had never really had filming before. We were the first major project to go there. And so it became the challenge of shepherding them through the process of what this was, and bringing these big talent and a lot of attention there, and then finding a sweet spot of when it would be. We wanted to be, our new production schedule was more towards the summer, and these Jersey Shore towns, that's when they do all of their business. They basically close up shop in the winter, and they get just, from Memorial Day to Labor Day here in the US to do all of their business to kind of make their nut for the year. And initially, before the strikes, we were going to be filming way out of their, their busy season. Post strike, it was like we were kind of edging up against it. And so it became more challenging to make it work where we could go there without disrupting, these businesses that rely so heavily on one season of the year.
A quick shout out to Aaron Hurwitz, who is on the call with us as well. Just want to say hi. And are there any scenes in this, when you in rewatching it, that kind of make you smile when you think about them, because what was going on behind the scenes, but whoever's watching it would probably not know what went into that was maybe particularly challenging or just funny?
I don't know if it's really challenging, but I really enjoyed all of the concert stuff. That was, we filmed Newport, the town itself, in Cape May, but the Newport Folk Festival, the actual concert performances, we filmed at a park in central New Jersey, that we basically took over and erected that stage. And it was a fun on-set experience because it, to a certain extent, just felt like you were at a concert. The way that James Mangold, the director, and Faye, the DP, wanted to shoot this was that those sequences was basically, they set up the cameras and just let it roll and did 30 to 40-minute takes that were the actors coming in. It was all live, them singing the songs. And then, so it just became, the song's a little repetitive when you hear them the 20th time of the day, but that kind of vibe to it, I think, for the crew in general, especially because there was a lot of overnights, which we all know can be long and tiring. I mean, it brought this kind of fun energy to it that I just hadn't experienced on set before, where it was all of a sudden you do sort of feel like you're just at this music festival, even though we're all at work. I think challenging was our Jersey City hub. We call it like our McDougal Street hub that was supposed to mimic 1960s McDougal Street, where so much of the folk, near where Bob Dylan lived when he was here, and then where so many of these folk music institutions, Cafe Wa, Kettlefish, and whatever, were there. And us finding that stretch and then working with Jersey City to close down, a couple of blocks for a few days of filming, but then with all of the residents and all of the businesses to totally take over, to redress, every storefront to mimic this look, and just the challenges of convincing this place that has had filming, but maybe not to this degree, and going through dozens of business owners, some willing to work with us and were interested, and then some that were not so into it and knew they kind of had us and could jack up the fee as much as they want because we were in too deep, and they're sort of I'm probably not ethically the most reliable people, but ones that were trying to make a dollar and just that fight to get it all done.
Well, it was really great to kind of go back in time to get a taste for this stuff on the screen. It was a really fantastic job that you guys did. We have to move on to the next feature, but thank you so much for joining us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to JP O'Connor, who's going to be chatting with our finalists from The Apprentice.
Hey, JP.
Hello there. It's nice chatting with you last night. I just want to preface this because I think it's so funny if I phrase it this way. You took over a show that was in a bit of a mess and full of indecision, with 50 period locations in 30 days during a SAG strike, and a film with a subject caused locations to cancel.
Yeah, that's about says it. And we're trying to copy period New York in Toronto, so that was another big challenge. But
and then you flew in, you threw in the idea of Mar-a-Lago in Florida. So why not?
Right. And we shoot that in January, where it's like nothing but snow and winter and bliss. So, anyway, yeah, we came up with some solutions. It was quite a ride, this movie. The producer who hired me didn't mix words. He said, look, this is going to be a big challenge, but he really believed in the project. And he also knew that because there's so many locations, you can't just do that with a minimal crew. You've got to have a fairly large staff. So I really owe that to my crew and the staff that I was able to hire. Obviously, it was during a SAG strike, so a lot of people were out of work. So you could hire really key people that had a lot of experience. Our on-set location manager was fantastic.
So how many did you have in total?
I guess I had a crew of about 10. I had 4 ALMs, and I definitely had 3 scouts. And we were constantly scouting throughout the movie because there were a lot of indecisions. The great thing about it was we had these 10-hour days, so that was fine, except that the director and the producer would go into massive discussions and arguments about what was going to happen the next day. So we were on that kind of a movie where it was like, a moving target every day. The next day you weren't sure quite what was going to happen, or something was going to get canceled or, picked up.
So it's living a little bit on tender hooks.
Definitely. Yeah. So, and I think that it's interesting because obviously, The Apprentice, the subject matter and everything, of course, it would be fine to shoot in Canada. And you would think, hey, that's no problem. We'll just be able to shoot that anywhere. But when we had this bank tower locked up to be the Trump Tower, and somebody from way up high basically just shut us down when they heard that we were doing a Donald Trump movie, which is kind of unfortunate because I don't think they realized, their quote was, "This is a trashy movie." And we really believe that it's actually a good movie. And so that was, too bad for them. But that's I mean, normally here you get subject matter, okay, the Catholic Church maybe doesn't like it or something like that, but you never don't really find that the politics in Canada would have that much of a bearing, especially when it's not even our politic. But clearly that was a different story.
So what was the solution for Trump Tower?
Well, the solution was we had a very film-friendly office building around the corner. There was a lot of, that was where there was visual effects that came into play. And we were able to turn that around within about 3 days, which was a big scramble, tech survey, get everybody on board. And luckily we pulled that off. So, but visual effects really had to step in there to, help that location out.
And you
Most
also
of the
had a bunch
time,
of
yeah,
you
most of
also
the
had a bunch of
locations were not visual effects oriented. It was just sort of, put some period picture cars on the streets, let's lock it down, and then, go from there.
and there's also additional art direction at the office tower to make it look like Trump Tower, right?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. Like we were filming this grand opening, so it had to do with a party. So, everybody was brought in with, authentic period clothing and that sort of thing. All that stuff sort of helped sell it.
So could you talk to about Roy Cohen's place?
Yeah, Roy Cohen's place. That was a location that came sort of later as we were filming, and it was a decision that was made last minute. But the architecture of that just had a Florida feel, although the size of the actual mansion itself wasn't all that large. And I think that's what people were kind of bumping on. But we made that work, especially in the scene where, he's at the table and the dining scene. That has a big grand area there that we're able to pull that off.
And Roy Cohen's apartment?
Yeah, Roy Cohen's apartment. Apartments are always, I don't know, they're very tough here in Toronto. Anytime that there's an apartment written,
everywhere.
it's just like you have to go through this process where it's like, oh yeah, is this apartment? Oh, surprise, surprise, it's too small. It basically either end up building it or you go to a house and you recreate an apartment, right? And that's essentially what we did. We did that with even Trump Tower penthouse, where we were in a major mansion, and we brought in some elevator doors in the front, and we just recreated this actual house and made that the Trump Tower mansion penthouse.
You sent me some pictures, so I was gonna have Sasha.
Yeah. So
comment
the
on them.
interesting thing is, so there was this second unit day suddenly that came up out of the blue, and they wanted to do some traveling stuff. And ironically, that second unit day was just me and a PA and some key crew. Anyway, basically, we're this picture here, that's Sebastian Sand saying he's got to use the washroom. We don't have a washroom, but there's a portable toilet in the middle of the park there. And so we're like, hey, maybe you could try that. And so it's kind of a funny thing where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sending the star of the movie to a portable toilet in the middle of the park. But anyway, so that's
it was
why I
very
got that
amenable.
picture.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So, but on this day, literally, we were watching this scene. It was in a van. I was watching it live, and it was that point where I was like, "Oh my God, this is really good. Like the acting is amazing. The script is fantastic, and I was getting super excited about being a part of it. Like." I've been at this for 30 years. You go from job to job. It's great. And of course, we all do what we do, but occasionally you get something that you get really something passionate about and that you're proud to actually work on. And it was this moment where the two of them were in the car together, and they used this in the trailers for the movie. And so here we are. That's the producer. I'm over his shoulder, and we're just sitting in a van, just sort of on a side street, watching this live.
Lightning
And,
in a bottle.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah, and there we are. So the car on that day broke down, and so the exterior stuff that we were shooting with the car driving around, that came to a halt. And then we got these guys rigged up in this camera car situation, and there we are. So that was, yeah, that was a good day, and it was one of those moments where you remember. I mean, I'm kind of, I'm senior, so I find myself behind the desk more than I'm actually on set. That's how we work anyway, and so this was a great opportunity to get back to the glory days of being on set and seeing everything going on there.
So do you have any other challenges that we didn't cover in our conversations that you might have missed?
Well, I think that just, some of the challenges I think were just that the director, Ali Abbasi, had this project for 8 years. He'd been trying to put this together. And now that we actually were to the point where you've got to go to camera, it was sort of like he had to finally pull the trigger on making decisions and like, okay, this is a great location. And even though I knew that the locations were fantastic, it was about trying to convince him that it was the right thing to do. And there was a sort of a bit of patience that was involved in going through that process.
And you had a great art director.
The art director was amazing, and there was a Matthew Davies was a previous designer on it. He left to go on to another show. Like all this stuff was happening during the strike, so it's almost like things were getting handed over, and here we are. I'd like to say like it was like a perfect storm that just came together.
It came together and it was run out of time.
And it just and just produced this movie, and
well, I'm a huge fan, and you all know how much I appreciate the film because I think it was just really quite a remarkable little fun run for
an indie movie, and being able to pull off what we did. I think it's definitely something to be proud of for sure. And it was good.
Been great chatting. Thank you so much.
All right. And we actually weren't sure if we were going to have anybody from Twisters available on this panel, but we do have Joe Stargensky with us. So I'm going to hand this over to James Parker, who's going to ask Joe a couple of questions. Joe, thanks for surprising us with being here. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Hey, Joe. You shot this thing across Oklahoma and Texas, is that correct?
Oklahoma mostly.
Just mostly Oklahoma?
Yeah, we weren't in Texas.
Were you doing this during tornado season? Did that play into your schedule at all?
Yes, it did. First of all, I'm perplexed and honored to be nominated here with this group of people. And I'm really honored that Janice let me help her guide this ship with these winds, you know what I mean? But yes, we did shoot during tornado season, and tornadoes weren't the big factor. I actually think the Tornado Alley is moving southward to like Texas and stuff, still in Oklahoma, but southern Oklahoma. But lightning storms were the big thing. I was in a car for 6 hours waiting for the clearance to go back to set because of lightning. So, yeah.
That's crazy. It's pretty flat out there, which makes some logistical challenges. You want to talk about?
I was going to say, why didn't anyone ask me, how did you find this flat land in Oklahoma? That joke is for the people in Oklahoma right now who are on this.
So was it, hiding equipment, gear, staging stuff? How hard was that when you're looking? You can see everywhere down miles and miles away.
It was pretty much fields. So wherever we weren't looking, behind camera. Right. But what we did, basically Janice was a supervising location manager and I was second unit manager. So we were supposed to do 29 days. We ended up doing 34, I think 33 days. And main unit was supposed to do 53 days, and they did 60. So second unit, what we did was a grid, and I think I sent some stuff to post up here. But what we did was a grid system. So the roads were a mile wide and a mile long. So we would find one square, sometimes two squares, that we could line up our picture cars, which were about a half a mile long, and we would just drive the whole route and do the scene. Just keep doing it with the edge, with drones, with everything, and just keep going around and around. And our director, I mean, it's not just roads. Our director was very interested in science, in the science of tornadoes. So he would watch hundreds of hours of YouTube videos. I mean, there's actually, what I didn't know, that the top of the tornado spins differently than the bottom of a tornado. And so it could lift a semi, put it on its back, and as it passed, right it up again. So he would try to include stuff like that. So he wanted roads, he wanted red roads, because he wanted to do a red tornado. And if you watch the movie, he has fireworks going up in the tornadoes and stuff like that. So it was hiding things like porta-johns and stuff. Yeah, like old barns and stuff. We'd just put it in there. And we'd have a lot of helicopter shots. So their helicopter landing area, we'd have stuff behind them, a lot of trucks and stuff like that. But we would get there were a lot of oil pads that aren't oil pads anymore. And we would just put all the equipment on that, and that's where we staged.
The rodeo scene was pretty intense. You want to talk about setting that up? Probably took a little while.
Yeah, that's basically, we found a big pad of land. It was just all grass, and there were people who put together rodeos across the Midwest, and they came and they set it all up. We built the stands. The rodeo happened the week of the actor strike. So I think Thursday night, because they struck Thursday night at midnight, supposedly. So our producers were like, well, let's shoot till 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. because it's 2 hours difference. Yeah, 2 a.m. because it's midnight in LA. And that didn't happen. So we didn't film our last day of the rodeo because they didn't keep it up. So we were gone for 2.5 months, 3 months. And kudos to Janice, who was like, we're going to bring everybody back. Don't worry, we're going to bring everybody back. And as soon as they made a deal, she was on the phone and said, you're getting on a plane tomorrow.
Right. Last question for you. The neighborhoods. You tore up some neighborhoods pretty good, not just the houses, but the streets. And so what was the neighborhood outreach like? We're going to come in here, we're going to, throw stuff all over your streets. Like, could they access their homes? How'd those conversations go?
I wasn't part of, I was part of El Reno. We shot in El Reno, which is a real town, which is kind of the third worst tornado. It's registered as the widest tornado in history. And they all have stories. And when you go there, tornadoes are entertainment. Like, the news people stay on till 3 a.m, and people have their favorites and they watch them and they're like, look at this beautiful tornado. But 3 people died during it. But that's like part of the that's part of the process. People die, but they watch these things religiously. It's like a soap opera. And so we had Chickasha, which we did not film at. And Chickasha, we had 4 or 5 blocks of aftermath. And that's when the strike happened. And we fenced it off, and it stayed there for 2.5 months. And we used people's real homes who were next to it, and we just ruined their sides. We, just made it whatever. We put cars and trees and stuff like that. So that whole debris field was not CGI or anything like that. It was a debris field, and it was the most human part of the film, I thought. So, and then the other part was El Reno, which we everyone was pretty great. El Reno was great because there's like the film commissioner guy there was perfect, and he wanted us there. So we made deals with probably 3 or 4 blocks, and we had a deal with Route 66 was there, and we flooded the streets, and we brought down a water tower, and created that. So that was practical. Not the water tower, but the flooding. We had jet engines blowing things all over Route 66. We asked the special effects guys, like, so this won't go far, or like, how far will this go? Do we need to catch it? And they go, no, it'll just fly and then stop. And it went on to Route 66, and we were in the middle of Route 66 trying to pick up debris.
Wow. Created quite a mess, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of practicals except for the flying cows. So.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. And,
sure.
Great chat.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you to all of our finalists for being on this panel and everybody else who joined to listen to their tales from the trenches. Thank you all so much. It's really great to be in a room, even if it's virtually, with all of you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.